All right, we are live for the 85th episode of the
Let's Go podcast. We're back again. We got an exciting podcast. As you see, typically I'm wearing my HSL Youth or Gridiron Gauntlet cap, but today I got to rep the Yankees after a special win last night, quieting all the Met haters, including Mr. David Gottlieb himself. And from the looks of Yehuda Laub, also not so happy. So I assume he's a Met fan. Anyways, a big series win, showing who once again who the big boys in town are and will be forever. So I was actually at the game last night, and I was smiling very big as I was walking out with my brother Harry Edelman. So we want to welcome Yehuda Laub to the podcast, our second JCBL pod. Obviously, we had Mr. Eitan Walls on last time, and now we have the pleasure of having on Yehuda Laub, who not only played in the league for his whole career, but is now still a part of the league as an umpire, and we're happy to have him on.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, funny backstory. Yehuda, did you watch the first JCBL podcast we did?
I did not watch it.
So, funny backstory. Yehuda's dad, Aaron, right?
Yes.
Had a bone to pick with some of the things Eitan Walls said, and I had two loud numbers in my phone. So I meant to message Rabbi Aaron, the dad, to have him on to defend what he wanted to defend. But we got lucky. We got the son instead of the father because I mixed up who was who. So just some funny backstory. So, however, Yehuda is equally a good guest, but can't weigh in on the controversy with Mr. Walls. So we're going to have Aaron on in the future.
That is a funny story.
Yeah. So how long have you been involved with JCBL?
Me personally, I joined the league in second grade. So that would be close to 8 years now, 9 years. 9 years.
What grade are you in?
11th.
You're in 11th. Where do you go to school?
Marcia Stern Talmudic Academy, MTA.
Marcia Stern Talmudic Academy. I haven't heard it referred to that way in a long time.
Yeah, me neither. I know because there's a name.
Do they give you extra credit if you make reference to the sponsor? Is that how?
No. That's just how I like saying it.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. So you started in second grade, and what team were you on?
AY. On AY for all of the 6 years I played.
AY for the 6 years you played, and how did you guys do?
Depends on the year. I mean, we were in the championship 3 years out of the 6.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, we never ended up winning those. Tough.
Oh, you're like the Buffalo Bills. You're like the Buffalo Bills of the JCBL.
Yeah.
Was there one common enemy that you kept on losing to?
It was Mashadi until 6th grade, and then 6th grade season didn't happen because of COVID, and then in 7th grade we did not make the championships, and in 8th grade we lost to Woodmere. I don't know if either of those teams are still in the league.
Woodmere is. Yeah, Mashadi's no longer in the league, at least for now.
What position did you play?
I was catcher.
Mm-hmm. Now, all the way through?
I started playing catcher in the middle of 3rd grade.
Probably a tough position.
4th grade. 4th grade.
It's probably a tough position at the younger levels when there are a lot of wild pitches.
Yeah, it wasn't. I'm saying it wasn't. It didn't get easier because the rules in the 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th with the stealing, it only got harder. But it definitely wasn't easy.
The pitch is also probably coming a lot faster. It's a lot.
Credit to my pitcher, Ari Stern. It's great for my whole career.
So you caught one pitcher most of the way.
Him and Dovey Barnett, but more him.
Hugh Gardens Barnett.
What?
Hugh Gardens Barnett.
Moved to West Hempstead.
Okay, got it. So you finish 8th grade, and we know there's no 9th grade hardball, 10th grade hardball. Is there a specific reason for that as far as you know?
I do not know why there's no 9th, 10th grade hardball.
Do you think there should be?
I think it would have been a lot of fun to play in it.
Maybe it's something going forward we could look into.
I know that a lot of high schools have teams. That's the
Hardball teams or softball teams?
Both.
Softball I know for sure, but there's hardball also?
There's hardball on MTA.
Does Mark? Oh yeah.
You're right. Now that I think the Yeshiva League has both hardball and softball.
Yeah.
Did you try out for the team?
I did. Unfortunately, I did not make it. I didn't have catcher's
So
gear,
JC
so I couldn't try out for the position I wanted, and didn't end up working out.
Wait, you could only try out for catcher if you own the gear?
Yeah, I thought that was ridiculous. They didn't let me try out for catcher because I didn't have the gear.
Yeah, that does seem a little bit tough.
If I'm not already going to be the catcher, then why would I already have the gear?
It's an oxymoron. That's pretty good. So then you got into, I understand you're one of the umpires in the JCBL.
It's a funny story because so my older brother, he did that.
What's his name?
Arya. He was also a catcher, better than I was, at least at throwing people out. And his 8th grade season, he reached out to Paul. Somehow he ended up becoming an umpire as a high schooler. In my last season in 8th grade, at the end of the season, I think it was the last regular season game or the playoff game. Paul comes over to me. He's like, "You're going to work with me next year." And I said, "Sure." So
when Paul says something, people listen.
Generally, yeah.
So how did you? So a big struggle, and I've been trying to explain this to people. Avi and I also run men's softball leagues. A big struggle has been recruiting good umpires. And I think there's a very strong skill set you need to be a good umpire. And you also need the person to be willing to work just a couple of hours on a Sunday, which is not usually a convenient time for people. So it's really hard to recruit strong umpires. But it seems like you've really figured out how to do a good job very quickly.
I mean, it's been 3 years, and I didn't start out behind the pitcher. Started out as a first base umpire in 9th grade. I was just counting pitches. A lot of the umpires were not so eager to work with me. They were hired by another organization, and so a lot of games I would just sit there. But it was always good to come back to the games because Sunday afternoon, what else am I doing? Especially during like Sphera, where I don't go to MLB ball games. So I was.
It gives you something to do, and you make a couple of bucks.
Yeah.
So you start out as a base umpire,
Right.
and then you. How long did you work as a base umpire before moving behind the mound?
So I did that in 9th grade, and then last year I didn't really end up working so much, but I still would have been a base umpire. And then this year, Paul reached out to me. He's like, "You gonna work with me again this year?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Great, we're gonna put you behind the mound for 3rd and 4th grade." I said, "Sounds good."
But listen, from the game I was there, you did a good job. I was there opening day, actually. I didn't know that was your first time umping behind the mound. And for someone's first time, you definitely have control, which, again, we talk about, Dave, I know there's 3 main things you need as an umpire. We always talk about it's, control the game, being willing to work for short hours, and, someone that, is professional and, stands out. And I think, at least from the game that I saw, you encompassed all 3, especially with the younger kids. The younger kids in our mind, Dave, is, it's much easier, it's younger, but a lot of times the younger kids come with more fiery parents, much more invested in their kids and making sure that their kids are treated right and get the right amount of calls and respect. So it might not be as easy as you think.
Avi, even, I guess, sometimes it's hard to take an L as an adult, but it's even harder to take an L when your child's the one taking the L.
Yeah, no, for sure. Again, from the game I was at, it was opening day. Maybe parents are a little more calm, but there definitely were some, and also the gift deal coaches also. Coaches, they want to win. So, it doesn't matter the age of the kid, how old the kid is, they want to win. So as an umpire, you have to always deal with that, which is also very tough.
By the way, how did you get a JCBL cap? Where did you get one of those?
Paul gave it to me. It comes with the job.
Paul makes these caps, or Paul is given these caps by
I do not know where Paul got the cap. All I know is that he gave it to me when I started in 9th grade.
That's cool.
There's a shirt too, but I was not able to. I don't have it on me right now.
So have there been any challenging parts of being an umpire?
The most challenging part is I guess you want to get it right, and you're always going to be second guessing yourself, and that's when someone can say something to you, really take you off your edge, because you're umping a game and you second guess yourself for a second, and now a coach is screaming at you and you don't know if you should stay solid in your call. So I'd say that would be the hardest. You gotta really stick up for your calls.
Be confident. Be confident in your call. It's funny you say that because I was actually speaking to a parent yesterday during our HSL Youth Kids Leagues, and he was telling me that what he was passionate about, and I don't want to say his name because I don't think there's a purpose, but he was telling me that what he really looks for in a good umpire, and he's a coach, is an umpire that's confident about their calls, an umpire that's making a call confidently, loud, and loud and proud. Like they don't need to be the best umpire. Obviously, you don't want someone who doesn't know what they're doing, but to be confident in what they're doing, not to be constantly changing their calls and whispering balls and strikes, but someone who's confident in their calls and confident in what they're doing. I think it plays a very big role in making a good umpire.
So, a funny story about that. Me and my brother, when he was in 12th grade, he was also doing behind the mound. I was still doing first base in the Tier B championships for 3rd and 4th grade. There was a ball.
What do you mean when you say Tier B? You mean the losers of the semifinals? Is that what Tier B
It's
means?
the second bracket. It's
Okay.
Oh yeah, Avi, do you know about this? We're supposed to get on a call with David Kirshner and to talk about and Sam to talk about for the.
Oh, okay, I wasn't familiar. Anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we were doing this game, and there was one ball that was hit, and it was close to the first baseline, and that's my jurisdiction. And I point in without making a loud call, and after the play, my brother comes over to me. He goes, Yehuda, you gotta make the calls loudly. You gotta make the calls loudly. So that was a big teaching moment, big learning moment for me.
Yeah, interesting. Avi, we have a head of officiating, Dom DeRosa for our men's softball, and he's very good at projecting.
And men's basketball.
And men's basketball, right? He's very, very good at projecting confidence and being loud. He's a big, charismatic guy, and I guess Paul is like that too. People aren't going to start up with Paul. So were you able to get louder, Yehuda?
I definitely was, especially given the new rule. That was big. It was like, wow, I'm the guy in this game. No,
you're a mocker.
This is my field now.
By the way, that's something we want. By the way, from umpires, you want that. In the HSL, in general, we take a lot of pride in during the game itself. Even though Commissioner Avi Edelman or David, or whoever it is, I don't want to get involved in anything to do with, obviously if there are rule questions, you have to ask rules, and Paul, in this case, is in charge of that. But, when there's a game going on as an umpire, it's the umpire's game. It's not anyone else's game. It's not Paul's game. It's not my game. It's not David's game. Like I said, if it's a rule question, obviously you call Paul. You don't want to get a rule wrong. But in terms of the game, it's the umpire's game, and I think we're very big believers in that.
Yeah, we have some interesting moments where Avi will be at a game. I'm kind of behind the scenes. I'm not involved with rules and stuff like that. Have a situation at a game where it seems like the ump messed something up, and people will turn to Avi, and Avi will say, "This is not my jurisdiction. I'm not the sheriff here."
Yeah, like I'll be doing videos. I'm very into the videos and the highlights. I haven't been by the minors. Minors. I haven't been by the minors since week 1, but I've been, it's very hard. JCBL and our youth leagues are like contradictory, so I can't get to as much highlights as I want to. I'm trying to work it out for next year, but for this year, I've been doing a little bit for JCBL. But a lot of times, for our men's leagues or even our youth basketball leagues, in the fall and winter, I'll be doing videos and highlights, and I'll have either parents or players come over to me and be like, "Get rid of this ref. That's a terrible call. How do you not overturn that? Overturn it." I'm like, what are you doing? I'm just here to work. I'm not here to do anything other than work. Like, if you have a problem, then we'll come on the podcast and discuss it after work. Like, the fact that you can even come over to me and complain about a ref in the middle of a game. Like, the concept, like, get frustrated at the ref. Get upset at the ref. It's the ref's call if they want to tee you up or not or throw you out of the game. But, like, it ain't doing anything but coming over to me, so don't waste your breath. But that's just my feelings on it. Imagine I'm not here. Just imagine a floating phone going around doing highlights is what I think about.
By the way, if anyone ever complains about me, I'd be very happy to come back on the podcast and tell them why they're wrong.
To be honest with you, we've had plenty of complaints about umpires, but nothing about you so far that I know of.
Yeah, you're in the green. You're in the green. You're in the green.
Thank God.
Has anybody said anything truly nasty to you at this point?
There was one father who, at one of the games, he was upset about a call that I called a strike. what had happened was that it was a sidearm pitcher, and none of the kids in that age group are really equipped for that. And so there was one pitch. He's throwing from all the way on the inside of the mound. He's all the way to the right of the mound, and the kid is a little bit close to the plate. He's not close enough that I have to back him off for crowding. But he's throwing also sidearm, and he's a righty, so he's all the way out. And the kid thinks the ball is going to hit him, so he takes a step onto the plate to get out of the way of the ball, which he thinks is going to float behind him, and it ends up hitting him square on the arm, right on the elbow, over the plate, which I called it a strike, because even if he's not trying to get in the way, that should be a strike.
Yep.
So father got very upset at me for that.
This is the father of the kid, or this is like a random father
who
who's
was
the
I don't know
coach?
if it was the father of the kid, but it was one of the assistant coaches on the team. He got up in my face and he said he was like, "It's laughable. How can you make that call? You're really gonna call a kid? You're really gonna call a kid out because it was strike 3?" And he's like, "You're really gonna call a kid out?"
Took guts.
Well, I'm gonna make the right call.
Good. That's what we like to hear. I don't know if we could say the words on here. This is a family-friendly podcast here, but that's what we like to hear with the in our leagues. We like exuding confidence, and that sounded like a very confident call, and not an easy one, especially knowing that the kid's parent might be there. If I was a parent too, I'd also, my initial reaction, be like, dude, my kid just got hit. How you calling him out on that? But truth is, listen, you're signing your kid up for baseball, man. This is not the HSL multi-sport league. This is the JCBL Powered by HSL. This is baseball. These kids are here to play professional Little League baseball. They ain't here to joke around. So I'm proud of you, and good for you for doing that, because it's definitely not an easy thing.
Thank God I haven't had to eject anyone, though. It would make for a great story. But
who are your coaches through the years?
Throughout the years, my dad was always the manager, starting in 2nd grade already.
Does manager mean coordinator? What does manager mean?
Manager just means the head coach for that particular team.
Oh, they call him the manager. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, like the MLB.
Like the MLB, or at least it's what I think it is. I don't know for sure, but my dad was always the head coach, so the manager, and then it was always Stern and Barnett.
Barnett from Kew Gardens? No, I'm kidding.
Rob
Barnett. Yeah. So that's interesting. And then the manager and coaches follow you to the next age group, so you're with the same people.
Well, it was
most of the way through.
Yeah, it was mostly guys in my grade, and those 3 were with me pretty much my whole career. Barnett left after like for the last couple of seasons. Maybe I think he left after 7th grade, so it was only 8th grade season that we had Coach Schickman. But for most of my career, those were the 3.
Got it. When I was back in JCBL, I seemed to go through. I had a bunch of different coaches. I had I don't know if have you heard of? Do you know Jeff Zwerin, Bob Garber? Any of these names mean anything to you? Simcha Shapiro, you must know.
Can't say.
No, Bill Salzbank. Wow, I guess it's a whole new crop. I guess people tend to coach their kids, and once their kids graduate, maybe they don't coach as much. Although I think Eitan Walzavi is a lifer, no?
Yeah, probably be a lifer, I assume.
Probably be a lifer. So Yehuda, question is, how do we recruit? You're not old. You're 10th grade. You said 11th grade. You seem to have developed a great style with umping, and also feel confident about it. How do we recruit? Come to think of it, Avi, that might even be the best direction to go in, to try to recruit more talented high schoolers to ump. I don't know. It's hard to find. People say, "Oh, why can't?"
Well, then you're gonna get parents saying, "Oh, we want professionals who's been licensed for 20 years."
Yeah, but
good luck.
Yehuda, but nobody's saying it about Yehuda.
Right. The answer also is good luck. Like, it is our job, and we're always going to look to make the league more professional. It's already doing this. But, we didn't have to jump into this. We're looking, obviously, to make the league better, but it's not easy. Like, it's really, really not easy to find umpires.
Find umpires, yeah.
Smack in the middle of the day for 3 hours on a Sunday, like, it's very, the mornings for HSL is a little easier. You're done at 1 o'clock, you're free. Or if we had an umpire job for someone from 8 to 5, like it's a full day's work. If you're talking about dragging someone down, you're starting smack middle of the day for 3 hours. It ain't easy. So you're right. Maybe that's the route to go. And you never know. Like, we have a lot of, in the HSL woods, we have a lot of regular, typical, quote unquote, yeshiva guys who are now, close, been working for a few years or aren't professionals, but they do a really good job. We have a couple of them up in the HSL, and they do a fine job. They're not a professional guy who looks 6'3", 245, coming with professional gear, but they get the job done. So, that might be your route to take. I mean, every single one of our umpires have to be like that, but that could be a way to fill in the umpire role, make sure we don't have any emergencies. Like we had, what happens is when you try to be super professional and try to keep everything very professional, you'll have weeks where you're down 2-3 umpires and you're scrambling. It's happened to us a couple times, unfortunately. I've been receiving messages from parents saying, "Oh, is our umpire gonna be functional this week? Like functional, like." I don't blame them. They want to make sure that their game is a smoothly run game. But at the end of the day, you have to realize a lot that goes into it, and it's not so simple. Oh, just contact an umpire agency. Have them send you down 3 umpires. We've done it. We've tried it. David has been on the phone with 2 different agencies in the past few weeks. Only one umpire reached out, and the umpire said no. So, we are working on it. But you're right. This could be a way of doing it, of getting really competent umpires that are able to get the job done in the times that we need for the job to get done.
I just want to add, I feel like the best way to do it would be the way I did it, which was go from the league. You find guys that have been in the league for 5, 6 years, and then they're attached to the league.
Familiar with the rules.
Yeah, familiar with the rules. You have them be a first base umpire, work with some of the more experienced umpires, and then you can, when they get to be a little, like when they come to second half of high school, 11th, 12th grade, they can come in and really take over.
One other tough. What time does Marshall Stern end on Sundays? Or do you have school on Sundays?
I do have school on Sundays. It is.
Dave, quick stick to MTA.
Is it Marshall Stern or Marsha?
Marsha.
Name of a woman.
Yes.
Marsha Stern. So Marsha. Okay, so you end at what time?
On Sundays we end at 12:15.
Oh, okay, yeah. So another challenge is, I think a lot of, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The fact that you also played in the JCBL for a long time means you really know the culture. You really know, even if it's not something you can articulate, I assume you just know the atmosphere, you know the environment, you know how it works. So, I'm just thinking it would be great to, like you're saying, to kind of, kids are graduating JCBL in 8th grade, say, oh, next year, do you want to, umpire, train in for a year, something like that. Problem is, Chavetz Chaim ends at almost 3:00 on Sunday.
Yeah.
And probably Yesode also does, and that's probably a huge percentage of the, probably, I would imagine 50% of JCBL goes to Chavetz Chaim or Yesode, maybe even a little bit more than that.
That's fair.
That's fair. So, maybe for the late games or something like that, but that's another challenge with it, with possibly getting high schoolers. So, Yehuda, are there any areas that you think the JCBL... Well, I have a couple of questions, where in this transitional phase where the HSL is working, with JCBL this year and into the future, what do you think of the transitional year? What challenges do you see? What areas do you think we could do better in, or the league could do better in? It's a pretty open-ended question about the league as a whole.
I think putting a time limit on the game and doing 2 games a week definitely makes scheduling a lot easier. Unless there's a rain delay, because then you have to reschedule 2 games instead of 1. But otherwise, I think it makes it a lot easier for a lot of the coaches, especially when a coach has a doubleheader. They play two games back to back in the same place. I think it's definitely easier to play them like that instead of having to reschedule for midweek. I remember midweek games; it was always such a trek. You had to get picked up from school early. You had to bring all your stuff to school beforehand, depending on who was picking up for that game, and you had to change before you left, and you had to run out, and then you were in a rush to get to the park, and so the midweek games I think this eliminates a lot of the midweek games. I don't know for sure, but it seems like it has been doing that. So I think that's a big plus.
Yeah, that's interesting. how did it work? So I actually wasn't as involved earlier on when the scheduling was going on. What was this change from time untimed games to timed games, and how did that all work?
We lowered it. We lowered it. We lowered it. I think it was 2 hours last year. No noting after 2 hours. We lowered it to an hour 45. The reason being is we wanted to create as many double headers as possible to get in as many games on Sunday, right? A lot of times, if the game would last 2.5 hours, how are you having a double header? If game one doesn't end until 5:15, you can't have a game starting at 5:30 necessarily on certain fields due to permit issues or, you know, boys being out too late or getting dark even. So we tried crunching down on the times to enable every single field to have a double header, which automatically is going to limit weeknight games. I think what he's trying to say. And that was a goal of ours. Like you said, we got going in. I personally
Wait, so
got a
in the
lot of.
past there were only games. There were games scheduled for 2:45 and nothing afterward,
Yeah,
and then an ump would only work one game,
yeah.
or have to go to a different.
Games were even
Oh
later
no, an ump would
sometimes.
only work one. What's that?
Games were even later sometimes. Sometimes you get like a 3:30 game or even a 4 o'clock game. But there was usually only one game per field per week.
You know, another thing is even with this type of thing, because of the rainouts and because of Pesach and Shavuos and different things, we are going to have now some weeknight games and also some pushback about the double headers. We are going to have some weeknight games. Something that I guess we'll talk to the coaches and the coordinators about for next year is starting the season even earlier, which on Sundays. It seems a little ridiculous, but our men's softball league, we actually started on March 9th. And, thankfully we're now doing well playoff-wise. We don't need to have games there of Shavuos. We don't need to have games Memorial Day weekend, which a lot of people want. So hardball's a little different than softball, I think. I was talking to Zev Ader about this. Hardball, well, I don't know. What do you guys think? Hitting a hard ball coming in, is that harder on the hands in the cold weather than hitting a softball? That's what Zev seemed to think. I wonder what you guys think.
I think it depends on the bat. I think with a wooden bat, it's definitely harder because the shock.
Right. When do they start using the wooden bats? That's in fifth grade or in seventh?
Bats.
Wood bat is harder on the hands than the metal bat.
100%.
Interesting. See, as far as it sounds kind of funny, but as far as Avi and I are concerned, softball you can play 42 degrees. It's windy, it's cold, but there just aren't too many Sundays on the schedule before school ends and before the summer vacation. Speaking of school, I know you got to get back to class in a couple of minutes, so we should probably wrap up here. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I don't know. I think the league's doing a great job. I really enjoy being an umpire in the league. Not only is it a quick buck, but it's actually something I can enjoy doing. Being around the community and being part of and being a driving force in something that I've been taking part of my whole life. Even before I was in the league, when my brother Aryeh was in the league, he was in the league 3 years before me. 2 years before me, and he what's it called? And I would go to his games all the time, and some of my teammates were his teammates' brothers, so I knew them from beforehand because of the league. And so I feel like it's something that I'm very proud to be a part of.
Yeah, good. It's something I could relate a little bit. Like when I was in Romu for all those years, and I was on the Romu softball team, and I felt so chashuv in my position in camp. Like that year that I left, like I felt so sad. I ended up back there 5 out of the 8 Shabbosim that next summer. And then even up until this past summer, 7 years removed, I'm back there every single summer. My brother's not even there anymore. I have no excuse. My wife always tells me, you have no excuse to go back there. I'm visiting there. What are you doing at Robu? Your brother's not there. I said, the excuse is that I feel part of the community. I feel part of the culture there. I miss it. I need it. And I feel like over here to have the opportunity to sort of play it out in an actual role where you're still extremely involved is something very special, especially when you've been involved for so many years in the the JCBL league / community.
Can I ask how long ago you were in Romeo?
I was there for 10 years. Started in 7th grade, and I started going into 7th, and I left going into my first year in Queens, so third year base manager. So it was 10 years. So my last year there was 2018 already? I think 2018 is my last year.
I think I was there.
I think
I was there.
You overlapped with me?
I think I might have. I think I was in juniors.
Do you remember the legend Avi Edelman Roma pitcher? Because then you probably were. If not, you probably weren't.
I mean, it sounds very familiar, I have to say.
The sideways cap, was that part of it also? And the
I
catch up,
don't
was that all?
remember.
Did
It was
that
a
ring a
very
bell?
long time ago. I haven't been there in
Who's your
20
division
years.
head? Was it Rabbi Block?
It wasn't my block.
Yeah, you probably overlapped me. I think his last summer I think was the summer after mine. Either way, if you know Avi Edelman, legendary pitcher from Roma, then you were probably there with me. If you don't, you probably weren't. Although I tell you, I still go back now and these kids are recognizing me. Anyways, the point of this isn't to boast how much of a Roma legend I am, which it is a little bit. It's also to say that I could relate to that community feel in which when you feel a part of something, you want to always remain attached to it. And I feel like this is a very healthy way to be a part of the community. I think, no.
All right, let's
can
wrap
relate.
here. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for
Yehuda.
having me on.
Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Yehuda. We look forward to continuing.
All right, Yehuda.